My name is Michael Cunningham. This is Educide, the podcast. Tonight, who killed Joseph Smith? There were three presidential assassinations in the 19th century: Lincoln, Garfield, and Smith. Joseph Smith died 27 June 1844. Now for the rest of the story. History is a mystery. June 27th, 1844, a date that changed a county, a state, and a nation. By Michael Cunningham. Who killed Joseph Smith? Mean, motives, opportunity, and who benefited? This is what we were told that had happened. On June 27th, 1844, at approximately 5:16 in the afternoon, Joseph Smith Jr. and his brother Hiram were murdered in the Carthage jail in Illinois, Hancock County, by an armed mob. This event is singular in nature for their church. Joseph's persecutors conceived that the demise would be the church's demise, and this would end the Mormon question for good. What, where, who, when, why, and how? These are the questions that need to be asked, and this is the time we're going to do it. The question before us today is, what really happened? There were three successful presidential assassinations in the 19th century: Abraham Lincoln, Garfield, and Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith was running for president of the United States. On June 27th, 1844, in Carthage, Hancock County, Illinois, he was shot dead. The first successful presidential candidate assassination in U.S. history. There you also see a picture of Sidney Rigdon, his vice presidential candidate. Murder, mystery. Who or whom did it? On June 27th, 1844, Joseph Smith was murdered, and there is no question to this. The question becomes, by whom or by who? To understand this, we will look at these four factors: means, Black's Law Dictionary, second edition; motive, Black's Law Dictionary, second edition; opportunity, Black Law Dictionary, second edition; and who benefited the most from this deadly deed. Four factors for a murder. Means, according to Black's Law Dictionary, the instrument or agency through which an end or purpose is accomplished. Motive, Black Law's Dictionary, the inducement, cause, or reason why a thing is done. Opportunity, a set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something. We may see increased opportunities for export, for example. And who would benefit the most? Here we see a picture of Willard Richards looking out the window after he had thrown Joseph Smith head first out it. Why is Richards at the window? Why is no one shooting at him? Why was Joseph pushed to the mob? If Joseph was pushed, then this was planned. Means. Did the mob have the means to kill both Hiram and Joseph Smith? This is the question. Was this event planned? Did it take place on purpose several weeks before the July 13th National Convention in New York City? They could have done this before, but why wait till now? The means. Let's look a little bit deeper into this. They could not get a shot to kill Hiram. This was an inside job. The LDS Church would have a reason to kill Hiram because he was next in line to take over the church. The mob would not. The mob could not rush all up the stairs, at most 10 to 15 people. There were a very few bullet holes on the outside of the jail. The mob would have to have been in the room to shoot him. Hiram was dead in the room. Joseph was wounded inside the room. Then he was pushed out the window to his death. Only Taylor and Richards had the means to kill the Smiths. John Taylor had the means to kill Hiram, and Willard Richards pushed Joseph Smith out the window. Means of the crime. Here we go back and look at the physical features of the crime scene. We will see that the jailer's bedroom was a little bit under 16 by 16 feet. Please take some time to read this over. Next, we will look at the firearms used. The reports of John Taylor and Willard Richards were both present in the room. However, the bullet holes in the body were not of the 69 caliber muskets that were built in 1795 and 1816 that were used by the mob. They were much smaller caliber, leading one to conclude that the Smiths were shot with small firearms. Here you can again read the continuation. Also remember that the wounds do not lie. John Taylor and Willard Richards, the means, the location, and the time. They had the easiest shot at the Smiths and the only person that had to angle for one shot through Hiram's head. John Taylor would have never become president of the church without Smith's death. John Taylor being shot, hid underneath his bed, does not fit into the mob outside looking for him. Here we see a broadsheet for motive number one. Joseph Smith running for president of the United States, February 1844. Evolution of the campaign. On January 29th, 1844, Smith held a meeting in the mayor's office at Nauvoo with a quorum of the 12 apostles and others. It is unanimously decided that Smith would run for president on an independent platform, the Reform Party. Smith remarked, "I would not have suffered my name to have used by my friends on any wise as president of the United States or candidate for that office. If I and my friends could have the privilege of enjoying our religious and civil rights as American citizens, even though those rights which the Constitution guaranteed to all her citizens alike." On March 11th, 1844, Smith organized the Council of 50, a deliberative political body to promote the Smith candidacy. Evolution of the campaign 2. Winter Spring 1844. The assassination took place between the 17 May nomination and the 13th July National Convention. Time frame. This was not a spontaneous event. This was planned. The Latter-day Saints formed a new political party, the Reform Party, that held a nomination convention on 17 May 1844. Which was attended by delegates from all 26 states and 10 Illinois counties. The nomination of Smith and Rigdon was uncontested, and the platform adopted was stating that the party would support Smith for presidency, the better to carry out the principles of liberty and equal rights, Jeffersonian democracy, free trade, sailor rights, and protection of personal property. Arrangements were entered to hold a national convention in New York City on 13 July 1844. Smith wrote in his journal, quote, "This is an oratory enough in the church to carry me into the presidential chair on the first slide. When I look into the Eastern papers and see how popular I am afraid I shall be president." Joseph Smith was in the presidential race to win it. With the National Convention coming up on 13 July 1844, the national election coming up in November to December of 1844, the motivation to eliminate Joseph Smith became very real in the summer of 1844. The best way to make sure he did not win was to eliminate him before the National Convention began. Here, if you could take some time, you can read in detail Joseph Smith's political platform, why they wanted to help him out. In a condensed format, I have put it up here. People who benefited with Joseph Smith out of the way. This motivates also leads to a time frame. Why before July 13th, 1844? You have Democratic Governor Ford of Illinois, Brigham Young, U.S. federal government, the Whigs Party, the Democrat Party, the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, and the Texas statehood, and people who were anti-Texas statehood. Smith's national plan. He was going to free the slaves and pay slave owners for the trouble. He was going to get rid of prisons. He wanted free international trade. He wanted to cut the pay of Congress, making it a part-time job, not a lifetime job. He believed in manifest destiny, the annexation of Texas, California, and Oregon. He believed in fair treatment for Native Americans. This plan made these people very upset. Free slaves, pay slave owners, both the North and the South got mad. Get rid of prisons. Many people were upset because of safety concerns. Free international trade. American businessmen wanted high tariffs to be able to compete. Cutting pay of Congress, making it a part-time job. Political bosses and political parties were very upset. Manifest destiny, the annexation of Texas, California, and Oregon, upset the balance of power with the North and the South, the free and the slave states. Fair treatment of Native Americans. Native Americans were generally at this time not viewed to have rights. Motive number 2, the Council of the 50, making the Council of the 50 greater than the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. On March 11th, 1844, Joseph Smith formally organized an administrative body that became known as the Council of 50. The Council of 50 because it eventually included 50 men. Were organized in Nauvoo, Illinois to establish a new home for Latter-day Saints in the Oregon Territory, California, or the Republic of Texas. Participants viewed the council as distinct from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Whereas the church was governed in spiritual matters, the Council of 50 was a civil organization that was going to serve the literal kingdom of God on earth. The council met on 18 days between March and May of 1844. 7 months after Smith's death, Brigham Young reconvened the council, and this organization played a major role in planning the Saints' eventual westward migration to Utah. Motive number 2, the Council of 50. Lucien Woodruff was sent to negotiate a treaty with the Republic of Texas by President Joseph Smith. Lyman Wright that he was set aside to lead the Saints to Texas that next year, 1845. Both members of Congress were members of the Council of 50, and Lyman Wright was also a member of the 12 Apostles. Council of 50, Motive 2, Authorization for Lucien Woodruff, 16 March 1844. This is a letter drafted by Joseph Smith to give Lucien Woodruff the authority to contract a treaty with the Republic of Texas. Council of 50 reply, Lucien Woodruff, July 14th, 1844, letter to Sam Houston. Wait, the Republic of Texas already agreed to this. A treaty of annexation between Texas, the Republic of Texas, and the United States was signed April 12th, 1844. A treaty of annexation included these 9 articles. Even though Texas had reached an agreement with the United States, Texas needed the Mormons to settle in the frontier disputed land areas. Notice in purple here, you will see the places that voted against secession. If the Mormons had moved to Texas in 1845 as scheduled before the death of Joseph Smith, June 27th, 1844, and if the same population that moved to Salt Lake by 1861 moved to Zodiac, Texas, Texas would not have seceded from the Union. Motive 2, statewide secession vote. The death of Joseph Smith and the movement of only 200 Mormons, not 70,000. Statewide results for the February 23rd, 1861 secession vote. Yes, for secession, 46,153, 75.8% of the vote. Against secession, 14,747, or 24.2% of the vote. A total of 60,900 people voted. However, without the death of Joseph Smith, there would have been a movement of 70,000 Mormons to Texas, which would block voting. Let's look and see what the results would have been on that same February 23rd, 1861. For secession, the United States, the same amount of votes, 46,153, or 45.74%. Against secession, no. Increased block voting, 40,000 additional votes, males over the age of 21, estimated count, 54,747, or 54.25% of the total vote. Together, that makes 100,900 voters. Motive number 2, people against Joseph Smith, June 27, 1844. Kill him before he gains more political power. Who were the people that were against him? Number 1, anti-Northern Texans. Number 2, anti-Northern Southerners. Number 3, Northerners who did not want to see slave owners paid. 4, Southerners who did not want to see the rights for free former slaves. Who had motive number 3? Who had the greatest benefits from downplaying the importance of the Council of 50? U.S. federal government, Illinois politicians, Brigham Young, quorum of the 12 apostles, descendants of Joseph Smith, John Taylor, Willard Richards, Wilford Woodruff. Fort Texas, 1846. The United States built a fort, Texas, on the Rio Grande River in disputed territory. They are attempting to get the Mexican army to attack them. Mexico claimed up to the area where I'm broadcasting from today would have been the northern part of Mexico. Zachary Taylor had left the command under Major Jacob Brown. Fort Texas was attacked. They had 500 men that ably defended this attack. The attack began on May 3rd, 1846. Major Jacob Brown dies. The fort is renamed Fort Brown and the city Brownsville. Motive number 3, move to Texas, manifest destiny. This means all the Council of 50's efforts were taken either shortly before the official announcement, April 12, 1844, or after the negotiations with the United States were taking place. The United States would not want the LDS to move to the unclaimed or disputed areas because they would get the credit for defeating the Mexican army. The Texans would have used the LDS people for almost 2 years as a buffer zone. The Texas Treaty was not passed in the U.S. Senate at first. In fact, the treaty was never passed. It was passed through a joint resolution 1 month before the end of Tyler's presidency. Texas was left up in the air from April 1844 until December of 1845. If Smith had moved to the Mormons to Texas, the political base in Texas would have shifted to a pro-Northern, anti-slavery position. Motive number 4, the move to Texas. In 1843, President Tyler, then unaligned with the political party, decided independently to pursue the annexation of Texas. He had met stiff opposition with the leaders of the Democratic Party. At that time, the major leader of the Democratic Party was the former president, Martin Van Buren, because he did not want to go through with the annexation of Texas. The Democrats dumped him and took James K. Polk instead, who was pro-Texas Manifest Destiny platform. Motive number 4, after winning the independence from Mexico in 1836, the Republic of Texas sought to become part of the United States. Texas minister to Washington proposed annexation to President Martin Van Buren in August 1837. The administration rejected the proposal, fearing reprisals from Mexico and the controversy that would follow the addition of another slave state. In 1843, British interference in the annexation question, British opposed annexation in an effort to maintain trade with Texas. The United States compelled to do action. President Tyler reconsidered having the Republic join the Union. The first attempt was rejected in the Senate. Eventually, on March the 1st, 1845, a joint resolution was approved, and Texas officially was annexed December 29th, 1845. The move to Texas, motive number 4. If the LDS Church had moved to Texas, this would have greatly helped Joseph Smith's power base. Remember that Texas became the largest state in the Union. The Mormons would have been the largest population in the largest state of the Union. Governor Ford, motive number 5. Governor Ford, he wanted the LDS out of Illinois, and he did want the leadership of the Smiths gone. Governor Ford died in 1850, 1 month prior to his 50th birthday. He completed his term as governor in 1846. He moved to the farm and spent the rest of his life. In history, he gives a rather detailed account of the death of Joseph and Hiram Smith. He writes, "Thus fell Joe Smith, the most successful impostor in modern times, a man through ignorant and coarse, had some great natural parts which fitted him for temporary success. but which were so obscured and counteracted by his inherent corruption and vices of his nature that he never could succeed in establishing a system of policy which looked to a permanent success in the future. Motive number 6, the mob. It was not organized. It really gained very little from this, needed help from many other groups, and making this appearance to be planned, not spontaneous. Hiram Smith fell to the ground on the floor of the second floor of the Carthage jail. Joseph Smith is pushed out the window, falls headfirst to the ground, then is carried off and shot some more times. Joseph Smith, in a letter to Emma Smith dated June 27th, 1844, written the morning of his death, says, "There is one principle which is eternal. It is the duty of all men to protect their lives and the lives of the household, whenever necessary requires, and no power has a right to forbid it. Should the last extreme arrive, but I anticipate no such extreme, but caution is the parent of safety." The mob. If you believe 150 to 200 people in the mob stormed into the jail, where is the evidence? Where are the bullet holes located outside the church? How could that many people fit on those narrow stairs? How could the bullet angle be shot from the mob? How can a bullet be shot through the wall? Shot through the door and hit Joseph Smith in the face without putting wood splinters and without damaging his face more than a small ball? Remember, these muskets were 69 caliber. How did Joseph Smith get out of the window? Wounded. Was he pushed? Motive number 6 or 7. Brigham Young. Honest hearts produce honest actions. He never would have become president of the church. He would have stayed behind the Smith family for the rest of his natural life. He was leader of the LDS church for 30 years until his death. He led a mass movement to Utah, although Joseph Smith was telling the people to move to Texas, neither of which would have happened without Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith's deaths on June 27th, 1844. Here we have the artist's interpretation. Joseph Smith's dead body saved from mutilation by the light from God. Or was it saved by the Nauvoo Legion that came to get it? People who gained from the trial: Levi Williams, witness John Payton, Warsaw Signal editor Thomas C. Sharp, lawyer Jacob Davis, defense attorney Oliver Browning, and Governor Thomas Ford of Illinois. Here's another of the paintings. The major benefactors of the murder of Joseph Smith. Let's look at who gains from Hiram and Joseph Smith's death on June 27, 1844. Viewers, these stories do not add up. Here you see firing and smoke throughout the whole thing. People who gained and what they gained. Oliver Browning, defense attorney, Joseph Smith's murder trial. He became Secretary of the Interior under President Johnson. Brigham Young would have never been president of the LDS Church without the death of Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith. John Taylor would never have been president of the LDS Church without the death of Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith. Wilford Woodruff would never have been president of the LDS Church without the deaths of Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith. Work for the dead. Wilford Woodruff has his vision of the St. George Temple. Never would have had it because he never would have been president of the church. The LDS Church in Utah would have never gone to Salt Lake City, would have gone to Texas instead. Willard Richards would never have been in the first presidency of the LDS Church without the deaths of Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith. He was also the first editor of the newspaper Deseret News. National Democratic President James K. Polk would have never been president of the United States without the deaths of Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith. Zachary Taylor, general of the Mexican War, one of the leaders, became president of the United States. Never would have been president because Joseph Smith would have been able to lead the armies of the Mormons against the Mexican army. Major losers of the murder of Joseph Smith. Look who suffered from Hiram and Joseph's death. What history could have been as the smoke clears. Zodiac, Texas, where the LDS Church was going instead of Utah. There's a picture of where Zodiac is in Gillespie County. There's a picture of the building in the 1860s of the Mormon Tabernacle. This would have been on Temple Square. And here's a picture of Zodiac, Texas, taken recently. Notice that the tabernacle would be located on Temple Square in Gillespie County. Here you have two pictures or two drawings. One on the left is President Sam Houston. The one on the right is President Joseph Smith. Both would have been strong leaders in Texas for the staying in the Union. Here, Texas, red, white, and blue, would have never voted for secession on February 23rd, 1861, had the Mormons gone to Texas instead of Utah. And they would have gone to Texas instead of Utah if Joseph Smith had never been assassinated on June 27th, 1844. Notice that the Constitution would have been protected, the rights of people here. We would never had Reconstruction. This is the story. We want you to understand it. June 27th, 1844. It changed the county, it changed the state, it changed the nation, and it changed history. Thank you for listening to Educide the Project, and my name is Michael Cunningham.